We're going to be adding a little bit of Q&A into the lineup now. So if our faculty will join us here on stage. I'm Rosella Garcia, the Director of Alumni Relations here at Teachers College. And I'm so happy to see so many alumni and future alumni here with us today. As President Furman mentioned in her opening remarks, our future depends upon sustaining and advancing ongoing faculty and student research. And you'll see these themes are going to be with us all day today. So when you ask your question, would you please tell us who your question is for? And then we'll go from there. First question.
Sure. Hi, this is for Professor Okita. The question is, I had read, and please don't ask me where I saw this research, that people felt the perception was that they had learned more if they thought there was a person behind the bot when they're learning online. And so I'm just curious if the embodied robots make a difference compared to bots online.
So that's actually a study that we're currently doing. I think the study you're referring to is with agents and avatars. And so what it is that if you tell a participant that there's a real human being through the virtual environment, do you learn more than telling them that it's a computer program? And it turns out that if you believe there's a human being, you learn more. And so we're actually trying to do that study with a robot. And so when one case we'll have a human, so the interesting thing about that study was that it was exactly the same thing. The only difference was the belief. And so we might be getting a similar result, but we're currently working on that. So maybe in another couple of months, we'll be able to give you a good answer of whether this physical robot, having some physical artifact in front of you, makes a difference or not.
So I'll ask you to keep lining up here for future questions. And while we're waiting for someone to come to the mic, I have a question for Barbara. I was intrigued when I watched the videos of the learners sort of mapping out. Was that prompted? It was just something that came to them naturally? How does that sort of work in the body, I guess, the body and the mind?
We didn't tell them what to do. And as I say, we found that in other studies, that people are alone in a room, not talking to anybody, gesture for their own benefit. So no, we in no way prompted them. Right.
Fascinating. Next question. Would you please tell us who your question's for?
Sure. This is for Ryan Baker. I have a number of students who are gifted, and they sign up for MOOC courses, and they do well in them. Then they're frustrated when they go to the classroom and those are not recognized, even if they may have acquired knowledge. Now, when I question the student myself after they've taken the course, what I find is that their perception is based on wherever they came from. In other words, their age, their intellect, the type of school they're in. And I was wondering, how do you test for that? I mean, in other words, the knowledge that they walk away with is based on their environment as well as who they are.
That's a really great question. And the research on MOOCs and how students respond to MOOCs and how they learn in them is still in its infancy. It's such a new medium. But I agree with you completely that where students come from really matters. My graduate student, Elle Wang, who I don't think is here right now, has actually been doing some research where before our MOOC, she actually gave students a questionnaire based on where they were coming from, what their goals were for the class. She found some things that to us were surprising. For example, one of the things she found was that that students who came in the MOOC excited because they were in a MOOC, excited to be participating in this new medium, were the ones who kind of were the least likely to learn the material and succeed compared to the ones who were really excited about the material in the course and really just wanted to learn that material no matter how. The ones who came to the MOOC because that was the way to learn it. So that's kind of not a complete answer to your question, but that's because we're still asking these kind of questions and trying to figure them out as a field.
Right, and then one other question, and by the way, I concur with what you found. I find my kids who are outside of the United States and taking the course because they have no other access do much better than the child who's here and is going to get some kind of recognition for it, or so they perceive. My other question is, do you think we're going to move to the point where if you take the course, again, let's take it at a student level, and you then go to that university, they will test you and then give you credit so that you're not ignored for acquiring this knowledge? And I hate to use the word ignored, but you know what I mean. They don't get credit such that they don't have to take it again.
I guess my answer to that would be it depends on the MOOC and on the university. And I think that one thing I learned by teaching a MOOC is that there are benefits to still coming to a university and taking a class where you can get the one-on-one kind of attention and where the instructor can grade, create group participation experiences that are still hard to do in MOOCs. I would say that at the moment, the pedagogy that I was personally able to offer in my MOOC, while certainly I hope a positive experience for my students, was not quite the same as the class that we teach at Teachers College. It's possible that in another couple generations of development on this, especially, for example, where instructors are really working to build into systems the kind of support from the kind of systems I showed earlier, where you really can give students much richer experiences than in traditional MOOCs, which still very much are based on a lecture-based pedagogy, that we may catch up to that point. So I guess I would say that it's not inconceivable to me that we might be there in the relatively near future, but I don't think we're there yet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you.
Would you mind telling us your name and sort of your role here at Teachers College today?
I'm Jeff Lischendrello. I'm a new admit. And I actually have a question about how all three of these presentations overlap, specifically with assessments, because in the sense of visual assessments and drawings and how important that is to giving students a more full understanding versus technology, which gives the power to handle massive amounts of data, but doesn't seem as well suited to evaluating subjective type assessments. So I wonder if you see these kind of going in opposite directions and balancing both in the classroom, or is there a way where the two concepts dovetail with more advanced technology?
So, like everything in education, many techniques are useful, not just one. We've presented 3 here, and I think that we could present many more, right? Classrooms use many. As for the specifics about visual explanations, we did have rubrics of what information had to be in there. They were comparable, I mean, the same rubrics for the verbal and the visual. They were quite objective. We could see what kinds of structural and causal information was there. We found more of the causal in the visual, which was interesting. So there are objective ways of grading those, even with sharks and boiling pots. Right. They can be graded, and what teachers have found, this isn't my work, but it's the work of colleagues, is teachers have found that looking at the students' visual explanations is illuminating to them. Because they find gaps in their own teaching. They thought, oh my gosh, I thought that was completely clear. I see now they all missed it. So it's in many ways better feedback for teachers than the language. But let me give the others a chance to comment.
So, for example, when you might be using different tools, but the framework or the theoretical underpinning can overlap. So with peer learning or reciprocal teaching or recursive feedback, you might teach a student and see how they respond, and then you might learn from that. So that overlaps with what Dr. Tversky just mentioned. Also with, I don't really think robots are the only type of artifact peer. I think it could be agents, avatars, humans, environments. And so in that case, what is the best way to design a relationship with that? So there might be that underpinning there. With the data, with data and analytics, I think we've come to a point where we like to gather, where we have the capability to gather a lot of data, but how or what are we going to use that for is the next question. And so, for example, with robots gathering data within the classroom and then being able to take that data and show the teacher, become a good informant of something that's useful, kind of overlaps with Dr. Baker's work too.
Great responses. I agree with everything you guys said. I would just add one other little minor point, which is that I actually think that if you look at large-scale assessment today compared to a decade or 2 decades ago, we're moving away. Artificial intelligence technology is enabling us to model a lot of things and infer a lot of things that we thought we could only do subjectively. Students' scientific inquiry skill, students' help-seeking skill, students' collaboration skill. Work on the, for example, the PISA international exams this year, because of the ability to embed computer tasks that are the same for every kid and that can be graded consistently, but yet at the same time are much richer. I think we're actually moving in that direction. So I think that these disparate methods actually really all come together, and that's why I think it's these three talks make sense together.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much for your questions, and let's have one more round of applause for all of our speakers. Thank you very much. We're so glad to showcase the work of our leading edge faculty throughout the day today. And as I mentioned, this is definitely one of the priorities of our historic $300 million campaign. And we also plan to invest in our beautiful century-old campus, bringing it into the 21st century. Some of you will have a chance to experience what that looks like now when you sit in our classroom of the future later this afternoon. This classroom is a prototype that faculty are testing right now. The room is completely wired, and almost every flat surface is either a screen, a projector, or whiteboards, even the tabletops. Our goal is to take the best features from this prototype and replicate that model across campus. The campaign will also call for us to build our unrestricted funds, which will allow us to remain nimble and give TC the flexibility to address the most pressing needs of the college as they arise. The TC Fund supports every aspect of the college, including events like Academic Festival. But I must admit that my favorite priority of the campaign is our alumni engagement, our goal to connect and engage with more TC alumni than ever before. Our 90,000 living alumni are spread all across the United States and all around the world. Teachers College alumni are carrying out our legacy as they make their mark in industries from the arts to the sciences. They are teachers, researchers, career coaches, gamers, musicians, artists, managers, CEOs, university presidents, generals, heads of state, ministers of education, entrepreneurs. I could go on, but I think you get the point. Our alumni have such great stories to share, and we want to bring those to you. We were pleased to recognize the work of our distinguished alumni and early career honorees today. They were nominated by their peers and faculty. So I ask you today to think about the alumni whom you've crossed paths with and consider nominating someone deserving of this great honor. To meet our goals, we'll be expanding our programming reach both online and where you live.